So we're going in, this is our second part of Native Americans, and in our second part we moved, like yesterday we talked about the early Native American cultures in North America. Now we're moving into North America, but the tribes that were around as of 1492. So we look at, what's the significance of 1492? Columbus. Now, did he discover America?
No.
Not really. Okay, one, there were already people here, but from a European perspective, and specifically from because he wasn't even the first European to discover America. That goes to a Viking. But from a Spanish colonization perspective, he was the first. He was the first to bring the New World to Spain's attention. Okay. But that's kind of why the book just puts 1492 Native American tribes. These are the people that were living here at the time that Columbus came in, and they continue to live here. Right? It's not just like they don't exist anymore. The remnants of these tribes still do exist. So we're going to start first talking about the people of the far north. Alaska, like modern day Alaska, northern Canada, like that place, it's really, really cold. Okay?
Super cold.
Now, y'all talked about it, right? I just heard some of y'all say igloos, Eskimos,
Ice people.
right? I wouldn't use the word ice people to describe them, because that could be seen as being offensive. Because they're still around.
Wolf dogs.
These people
That's
are
a
still
wolf
around.
dog.
They still live in igloos?
Yeah, there's
Oh, I want one.
Okay? So, the main tribe that we're looking at for the northern people are the Inuit. The Inuit. They lived up in that northernmost part of the North American continent. Okay? Structures, they constructed igloos that protected them from the high, cold winds. Okay? And for their food, well, they would get on boats that they would make and coat in animal skin to waterproof them. And they'd go out, they would hunt whales,
Very nice.
seals,
Yep.
so clubbing seals, right? Which, that's why I put this is one of my favorite memes. Stop clubbing baby seals. These seals are on the dance floor.
Hold on, weren't there like a whole bunch of seals getting killed?
Oh yeah. Yeah, and the Inuits would kill seals.
No, now.
Now? Yeah.
That's sad.
Okay? But they use every single part of the animals that they kill. They don't kill indiscriminately, and they don't. There's a difference between the type of hunting that the Inuits did for survival, and then the type of hunting that European trappers would do for profit. Y'all know buffalo, right? Okay.
They're extinct.
No, they're not.
Oh,
they
it's
almost went extinct. Okay, you can go to Yellowstone National Park and see tons of buffalo. We have, us humans took them to the verge of extinction, and then we brought them back. It was a success story. Our conservation efforts were successful. Okay, but they almost went extinct because of the type of hunting that we were doing. Americans were going out, and it wasn't just Canadians too, right? But people were going out and they were killing the buffalo in mass for the purpose of their hides, the skin. Okay, they didn't care about the meat; they would leave the meat there to rot and decompose. And this really led, because it was profit motivated, right? What's the verse that we talked about being like the whole like as we study American history, there's this one verse that keeps on coming back. The love of money is the what? The root of all evil. So when hunting these animals for profit is concerned, they can be pushed towards the edge of extinction because it's the profit motivation. There. Yes, Mikey.
Can I go blow my nose?
Yes. Okay. But here, these guys, the Inuit, when they kill an animal, they kill it for sustenance. They use every single part. When they kill a whale, and whales are huge, it feeds the entire village for months at a time. Okay.
One whale?
Yeah.
How they kill it?
They go out there, they had harpoons, or like spears, and I mean, obviously they couldn't take on a huge whale, but the smaller whales they could get.
How did they,
How did they get it out?
like, how close were they, like, did they go out in, like, canoes or something?
Yeah.
To it? Oh.
Larger canoes.
So they could actually put it
Yeah.
on.
And then drag it back.
Right.
Okay. Trash cans are here.
You gotta put some hand
Then-
sanitizer on.
We moved from the far north and we started heading down south toward southern Alaska into what we know as the Pacific Northwest, as we talk about the western people. Okay. And so these tribes, if you were to come over here to the map and look,
I got some.
they would exist over here in the western part of Canada, British Columbia, Vancouver area, maybe even reaching down into the Seattle
All across
area.
Seattle.
Okay? So that's where these guys would be. The Tlingit, Haida, and Chinook. Okay, we're mainly going to be focusing on the Tlingit and the Chinook. Okay? Their structures, the area that they lived in was rich in forests, right? So when you have that area that, just like the Inuit, rich in snow and ice, so they built their structures out of snow and ice. The Tlingit and Chinook, rich in forests, so they built their structures out of wood. Okay?
Wood.
And so this is an example of one of the longhouses type of structure that you would see built by the Tlingit and the Chinook. Okay? And they were semi-permanent. So if something's semi-permanent, are they going to be moving around a lot?
Sure.
Like if a structure is permanent?
Not as much as they would.
Yeah, it's not something they could just pick up and go, right? And so they tend to stay in a general area, which if people are staying in an area, are they gonna be likely to farm? Yeah. So there is some small farming, other food sources here, salmon,
I hate salmon.
okay? Plentiful. Salmon in the Pacific Northwest, before we got involved for profit, for commercial fishing, salmon was plentiful up there. What are some other creatures that eat salmon? Bears.
Polar bears.
Not so much. The polar bears will eat seals.
Oh.
Ooh.
Okay.
Okay.
Oh,
And
or
walrus.
these baby seals.
But orcas, killer whales,
Yes.
they eat salmon.
Really?
Oh yeah. And killer whales are like they eat a
Killer.
lot of different things, and they can adapt to eat. Look, you'll find different pods. A pod is a group of orcas. You'll find that different pods eat different things based on where they live.
Oh.
So, but salmon, for the orcas that are in the Pacific Northwest, they eat salmon. They also will eat seals. Everybody eats seal. Yeah,
Have you ever seen the documentary Black Panther?
I have. We talked about
It's
that.
so good.
Mhm.
No, for real.
Okay, now we move further south down the Pacific Northwest from British Columbia, Vancouver, and we head to the area. This is a map of the Cascade Mountains, Cascade Mountain Range. Okay, so there's Seattle. Okay, there is Oregon right here, and here's Northern California. Okay, so between the Cascades and the Rockies, which are not pictured, but the Rockies are right over here. This is where these groups of Indians, the Nez Perce and the Yakima, lived. Okay? And again, as we've seen, one of the patterns developing here is the environment in which they live in, they adapt they use the resources available to them to survive here, right? So one thing that we know, just in terms of science, right, earth science, if you have a mountain range here and you have heavy moisture from water with heavy moisture coming off the ocean, what's going to happen when that water, the air with a lot of moisture hits the cold air of the mountains?
Sure.
What will happen? Will it rain?
Mhm.
Yeah. Is Seattle known for having a lot of rain? Yeah. Look at which side of the mountain range they're on. They're on the west side. They're on the side. They're between the ocean, which has the air heavy with moisture, and the cold air from the mountain range. So when that cold air moves toward the mountain range, when the moist air moves toward the mountain range, it meets that cold air and causes it to rain. Okay, which is why, as we know in science, one side of the mountain range gets all the rain, and the other side of the mountain range doesn't get as much rain. Yeah, because most of it's dropped.
Cause
On.
it like stops at the mountain.
Yeah, because in order for it to rain on the other side, the water in the air has to be high enough to make it over the mountain range. So it will still rain over here, but not as much as on the western side. So with the Nez Perce and the Yakima, they're not getting as much rain, which shows in these structures that they choose to build. Earthen homes, kind of like when you get soil and you compact it, make it really, really hard soil, and you can make a structure out of that, mixed in with branches and things like that. Okay. Their food source, being in the wilderness, they hunted deer, fished, and then they foraged as well. Okay. As you move further south, we get into the Ute and the Shoshone. So they lived, we're in California now. Well, the Ute and the Shoshone did not live in California. They lived, what's the state?
Utah.
Nevada.
I thought it was more down though.
No, so Nevada has that point. So you can see, you can recognize it being Nevada as it fits here.
Oh,
Utah is gonna be right here.
Utah's
Okay.
probably the fourth one.
Well, yeah, Utah is gonna be between, Nevada's gonna be between Utah and California. Yeah. But it's kind of crazy to think about. What's Nevada known for today?
Vegas,
Casinos, Las Vegas. What is Las Vegas's nickname?
Devil City. Nope. Yeah. Devil
Close.
Sin City.
Sin City.
Okay.
Right? Nevada is, Las Vegas is known as Sin City because of all the gambling and other stuff that goes on there. But right next to it is Utah.
Utah.
What is Utah known for?
Hunting, I think.
A group of people that starts with an M.
Millennium.
A group of,
Maya.
a Christian denomination or an offset of Christianity
Muslim?
that starts with an M. They used to believe in polygamy.
What's
Oh, I know polygamy is.
what
I
is
forgot
their
what they're
name?
called.
I know what you're talking about. Where they go like,
Mormon.
Mormon.
oh yeah.
Okay. Okay. So it's kind of odd to think, are Mormons, do they tend to be really conservative religiously?
Yes.
Yeah. Some Mormons won't, like the strict Mormons won't even have caffeine. Because they look at caffeine as a drug.
I cannot go
Which
without
which
caffeine.
technically it is a drug. It can change your brain chemistry. But most people look at caffeine as kind of harmless compared to other drugs like nicotine. Right?
Or alcohol.
Right? Yeah.
Or
Okay.
It is.
But so it's kind of odd to think Nevada, the location of Sin City, is right next to super conservative, religious conservative Utah. Right? Kind of a dichotomy there. Okay. But going back to these Native Americans, the Ute and the Shoshone, they would have lived in what's present day Utah, or sorry, present day Nevada, between the Sierra Nevada mountains and the Rockies, which the Rockies would have been around here. Okay. And you know, again, with the using the environment to meet their needs, temporary structures out of branches and reeds, not weeds, but reeds. Do you think they moved around a lot more than some of the other?
Not a lot, just maybe
Well, were the structures permanent or
temporary.
they're temporary?
What's the read?
Yeah.
So yeah, they
Like
could have
those-
moved. They most likely did
those
move
things
around
in
a
LA
lot more.
That makes it look like a hot dog on a green stick.
A what? Oh, and, well, reeds are just like really thin branches.
Oh, then never mind.
Yeah.
Just that's what it's
Okay.
supposed to illustrate it as.
So their food, what they could find, small game. They didn't hunt really big game out there. That's supposed to be nuts. That's a typo.
Nope.
Newts. No, nuts, berries, and they ate insects.
Ew.
Which scientists are saying that if humans want to continue to consume large amounts of protein that we are consuming, insects are the way forward.
Like eat some ants.
Ants, mealworms,
And
crickets.
crawling around.
I got
eating
a pet
it.
dragon.
And
My
fire
mom
ants.
I got a
actually-
pet dragon. He
My mom ate
Oh, I used to
snails.
have one.
Imagine
That's
trying
part-
to eat a
that's
fire
part-
ant,
yeah.
but it crawls down your throat and then bites you.
right? But some
I got
companies
one.
out there are
I like
already
it.
taking crickets and they're turning the crickets into kind of a cricket flour. They're grinding up the crickets and they're baking that
That's
into
sick.
things. But it's a protein source,
That's sick.
right?
Yeah.
Y'all know what's happening in Brazil right now, right?
No.
Rainforest is on fire
That's still
in
going
Brazil.
on.
They're still on fire?
Yeah. Well, one of the reasons they continue to be
I
set,
need some water.
no, it's a rainforest. And some of the fires in the rainforest, in Brazil's rainforest, are being deliberately set by farmers.
Liberal.
So
They
they're
want
not
more land.
They want more land that they can use for cattle production. Because people in Brazil want to eat more meat like people in America.
I don't want to be like that.
And so, in order to meet their demand for cattle, they're burning the rainforest so that they have land for cattle.
In sixth
It'll
grade,
take so long for this earth to burn.
we learned about,
It'll take like a million
I
years.
watched this video about
It took like
palm
3
oil,
days for the
about,
world to be
like, they
flooded.
were cutting down.
Oh, again.
That was just the
Yeah.
state.
palm oil,
Oh.
and apparently it's like
No, that was the world.
Yes.
I'm talking
Oh,
about
palm
Bible.
oil. Hey guys, remember y'all are right next to the GoPro, so these side conversations are being picked up by the camera. Okay? But yeah, palm oil is also pretty bad. They're burning the rainforest down in the Philippines, Indonesia, and that area. The palm oil is in pretty much, it's in a lot of things that we eat. Oreos have palm oil. Janica just said Starbursts have palm oil.
Palm oil?
Palm oil is in a lot.
Oh.
And it's bad. The way that they produce the palm oil, they slash and burn the rainforests so that they can plant the palm trees. But slashing and burning the rainforest, what does that do? What does that release in the atmosphere? A lot of carbon dioxide from that would have been trapped in the ground is now in the atmosphere, and that does contribute to ocean acidification, which is
Global warming.
and global warming. Ocean acidification is separate from the warming of the climate. And that happens when that CO2 in the atmosphere gets absorbed by the ocean, and it changes the pH of the ocean to be a little bit more carbonic acidic. And then your coral reefs, which are calcium based, and calcium's a base, dissolve to balance out the ocean. So it results in the bleaching of coral reefs.
What's up?
Alright, so as we move further, we moved south, now we're moving a little toward the east, so now we're talking about the southwestern peoples. What structure is this? What's it called?
Adobe.
Adobe.
Flash drive.
No, this is an Adobe structured house.
They got doors.
Okay.
That's crazy.
So southwestern U.S. and into modern Mexico, you had the Hopi, the Acoma, and the Zuni live. These tribes. Okay. Their main structures were adobe, or this is a stone house, and this is a house from the Hopis. It's hard to see that on that slide, but that does say Hopi. It's like a Hopi museum.
Was anyone in New Mexico?
Mhm. Yeah. These adobe structures would have. So these tribes are the descendants of the ancient Pueblonians that we looked at yesterday.
Okay.
Okay. So the ancient Pueblonians descended into these three tribes. So mainly they farmed. Now, if they farmed in this area, what did they have to do to farm? Irrigate. They had to irrigate. They had to bring water in because it's a pretty dry climate. Okay. And so they irrigated by diverting the flow of rivers and streams. Okay. And there's minimal hunting because in the Southwest there's really not that much big game because the vegetation is not plentiful to support a large deer population or anything like that. Okay. And then as we moved into southwestern into New Mexico, Arizona, as we move into there, we have the Apache and the Navajo.
We talked about that in my other school.
Yeah, Navajo
I don't know.
is like we as Americans owe a huge debt of gratitude to the Navajo. Okay? Because they did help, and I'm skipping down here, but they did help us beat the Japanese during World War II.
How?
Well, prior to the Navajo getting involved, but prior to us actively recruiting the Navajo, the Japanese had we were sending messages to our troops and stuff about where we were going to attack, and the Japanese were breaking our codes. Like we were speaking in code, but the Japanese could break them. So because they knew English, and then using their systems, they could break our code. So we had to get creative. The Navajo language is a language that the Japanese had never heard because it was exclusively American. Like there was Mikey. Okay. Right? So we had code talkers, or they were called wind talkers. Okay. And Japanese or Navajo troops, Marines, Navajos in the Marines would be essentially radio men in our fight, and they would be there with a non-Navajo Marine, and the non-Navajo Marine's job was essentially, if they were getting overrun by the Japanese, to kill the Navajo code talker. And the reason for that is because we did not want to have a Navajo code talker
On the other side.
be captured by the Japanese, interrogated, and have him teach the Japanese the Navajo language.
Because
Yeah, but once we had that, the Navajos were talking with one another, both in code and in their native language. And so the Japanese were like, what in the world is this? We don't understand a word they're saying. Because it wasn't English, it wasn't anything they had ever heard. And so because of that, our messages stopped getting broken by the Japanese, and we were able to continue to push through the Pacific.
your
Yeah.
phone seems very small.
Yeah,
How many people would be in there, or like sleeping there?
It probably has some
maybe
underground.
4 or 5.
How would they know? How would the Japanese get their stuff? Like get the code?
If they captured one of the Navajo alive,
No, like what? How'd they get the code? Like
by interrogating, like prior to the Navajo,
yeah.
they would capture American troops and torture them, interrogate them. One of the torture techniques that the Japanese used is they would take bamboo and they would take these slivers of bamboo and stick them under a person's fingernails and just push them down.
I did not want to
Immense
hear
pain,
that.
and eventually everyone has a pain tolerance. You give up, right? The Japanese during World War II were so cruel. They beheaded POWs, and in fact, after World War II, because of the cruelties in place, that's one of the reasons why the international world got together and came up with the Geneva Conventions. Let's put together some rules for warfare. Rules on how you treat prisoners of war. Yeah. Yeah. And if you violate these rules for war, after the war, you can be tried for war crimes. Especially if you're the losing side. Really, only if you're the losing side. Yes.
So, in most books I read about World War II, they say that compared to the Japanese, the Germans fought a clean war, even though the Germans were pretty dirty fighters.
No, I mean, thing is with war, people in general do bad things.
Yeah, just
There were times.
they fought more
Like,
clean than
well-
the Japanese. Like the Japanese would
Well, there's.
kill medics. They
So would we.
But I mean, like,
I mean, there were times in World War II we would have a group of German prisoners.
they would purposely
And
target the medics.
One of our soldiers
Time
would
in war.
just go in and kill them, even though they're. We did the same thing, too. War is horrible, right? No one should be advocating for war because it's a dirty thing. No one wins, right? Even the winning side, they have to pick up afterwards. It's just destruction. Okay. So coming back up here to the Navajo, I mean, we owe the Navajo greatly for our victory in World War II. But they lived in these homes called hogans, mainly hunters and gatherers, some farming, but not that much. And you know what? The sad thing is, even with the Navajo, when they served during World War II, they still faced discrimination in our army. During World War II, our military was not integrated yet. It's not until the 1950s or late 1940s that President Truman integrates the military. So that here, the Navajo would be discriminated even by their fellow Marines because one could say that they looked similar to the Japanese. And so they faced some discrimination there as well. All right, that's the last slide that we're covering today.
Noise.
Cornellos are due tomorrow. If y'all want to work on them right now, I would encourage y'all to do that.